Ladies and gentlemen, walks in, smiles, pauses for applause. Let me ask y'all a question. Have you ever had a man who clearly wants you, but he ain't saying nothing? I mean nothing. No text, no call, no how was your day, nothing. But somehow he's still in your orbit, liking your pictures, watching your stories, popping up when you least expect it. When a man is silent, the first assumption many women make is that he's not interested, that he's ignoring them, playing games, or simply doesn't care. And while sometimes that might be true, the reality is far more complex and often more frustrating. Silence doesn't always mean disinterest. In many cases, it means confusion, it means fear, it means emotional immaturity. And understanding that can save a woman a whole lot of self-doubt, stress, and wasted tears. Men are taught from a young age that showing emotion is a sign of weakness. Society trains boys to man up, to hide their tears, to fight their battles alone. Vulnerability becomes foreign to them, even dangerous. So when a man meets a woman who stirs something deep within him, something real, something powerful, he might not know how to handle it. That craving for connection, intimacy, and love doesn't come with a roadmap. And when he feels it intensely, the panic sets in. His silence isn't because he doesn't feel, it's because he feels too much and doesn't know what to do with it. Now imagine being a man who's never been taught how to navigate emotional terrain, who's never had an example of healthy communication or seen what it looks like to truly express feelings without judgment. Suddenly, he meets a woman who is radiant, grounded, and emotionally intelligent. She asks questions. She wants presence. She expects connection. And instead of rising to meet that energy, he goes quiet, he pulls back. Because to meet her there, he would have to dig deep into parts of himself he's never accessed before. And that's not something every man is ready or equipped to do. Sometimes silence is a defense mechanism. It's a way for a man to protect himself from rejection, from vulnerability, or from revealing his own emotional immaturity. He wants her, but he fears that if she sees the real him, the unsure, unpolished, unfinished version, she won't want him back. So rather than risk that exposure, he chooses to say nothing at all. It's not rational, and it sure ain't fair, but it's real. Silence becomes his shield, his comfort zone, but it's also the very thing that pushes her away. Another layer to this silence is confusion. A man can crave a woman, feel chemistry, and even imagine a future with her, but still be completely unsure of what he wants in the moment. He might not be ready to commit. He might be struggling with past trauma, financial insecurity, or self-doubt. And in that confusion, instead of opening up, he freezes. Not because the feelings aren't real, but because the timing, the mindset, or the internal clarity just isn't there yet. This silence is less about her and more about him not knowing how to process what he's feeling. Emotional immaturity also plays a big role. Some men haven't done the work. They haven't looked in the mirror and asked themselves what kind of partner they want to be. They crave love, but don't understand the responsibility that comes with it. Love isn't just flowers and sweet talk. It's effort, honesty, and emotional availability. And if a man hasn't reached that level of maturity, his silence is a symptom of his unreadiness. He might want her body, admire her spirit, and even envision a life with her, but if he can't show up emotionally, all of that craving sits quietly inside him, unspoken and undeveloped. It's important to recognize that silence in this context is not harmless. It can leave a woman second-guessing her worth, questioning her value, and internalizing blame that was never hers to carry. When a man craves a woman and chooses silence, he creates emotional static. He leaves her interpreting signals that were never clearly sent. And that emotional limbo is not fair to anyone. But it's also not always coming from a place of malice. Sometimes it's simply the result of a man not knowing how to step into the emotional space that love requires. So when a man is silent, it's worth asking not what's wrong with you, but what's going on with him. Craving is not the same as readiness. Desire doesn't always equal action. And silence, more often than not, is a man's way of grappling with emotions he never learned how to voice. It doesn't mean he doesn't care. It might mean he cares more than he knows how to handle. There's this common belief that when a man wants a woman, he'll make it known. He'll pursue her relentlessly, fight for her, make grand gestures, or at the very least express how he feels. But the truth is not always that clean cut. Some men crave a woman deeply, so deeply that it consumes them. Yet they don't know how to express it, not because the feelings aren't there, but because the language of emotion, affection, and vulnerability is unfamiliar territory for them. Craving someone isn't always about sexual desire. It's about connection, about longing, about wanting to be close emotionally, mentally, and physically. A man might look at a woman and see peace, strength, beauty, and everything he's ever wanted, but still fall completely silent. He may fantasize about sharing life with her, imagine conversations, moments, even a future. But when it comes time to open his mouth and speak on those feelings, he stumbles. Not because the emotion isn't real, but because the ability to express it hasn't been nurtured. A lot of men grow up in environments where emotions are not discussed, they're not taught how to articulate longing or how to navigate love that feels serious. They may know how to show affection physically or through actions like helping or being present, but not with their words, not with vulnerability. So when they feel that deep craving for a woman, when she makes their heart beat a little faster, when her voice lingers in their mind, when her smile is the one they look for in a crowd, they get overwhelmed. That craving can be paralyzing if they don't know what to do with it. For some men, silence is safer than expression, because to express something that intense is to risk rejection. To admit, I want you, I think about you, I crave you, is to hand someone a piece of power over you. That scares a lot of men, especially those who have been hurt, betrayed, or made to feel weak for wanting love before. So instead of saying something, they pull back. They stay quiet. They try to suppress what they feel, hoping maybe it'll go away, or maybe she'll somehow just know without him having to say it. There are also men who express their desire in indirect ways. Maybe he checks in on her in small, subtle ways. Maybe he watches from a distance, supports her silently, or shows up whenever she needs someone. But he won't say, I care about you, or I want you. Not because he doesn't want to, but because he literally doesn't know how to start that conversation. He's scared that the moment he tries, the words won't come out right, or worse, that they'll come out and change everything in a way he's not prepared for. Some men operate in the language of action more than the language of emotion. They think if I'm around, if I'm helpful, if I'm consistent, she'll know how I feel. But the truth is, women often need verbal confirmation. They need to hear it. They need clarity. They want to know they're not just imagining the connection. And when a man stays silent, even though he craves her, he creates confusion, distance, and sometimes even heartbreak. Not because he didn't care, but because He didn't communicate. It's painful for a woman to feel that energy between them, the magnetic pull, the chemistry, the unspoken bond, but then have to sit in silence, waiting for him to say what's on his heart. She might wonder if she imagined it all. She might question her instincts. Meanwhile, he's sitting in his own head trying to figure out how to speak a language he was never taught. The craving is there. The affection is real, but expression, that's where the disconnect happens. So yes, a man may crave a woman deeply and still remain silent, not out of malice, not because he's playing games, but because he hasn't yet learned how to speak the language of his own emotions. It's not always about not wanting her. Sometimes it's about not knowing how to tell her just how much he truly does. From a young age, boys are taught a certain kind of lesson, sometimes spoken, often unspoken. It starts early with phrases like boys don't cry, man up, or don't be soft. These aren't just harmless sayings, they're conditioning. They teach boys that showing vulnerability is dangerous, that expressing emotion makes them weak, and that the only acceptable form of communication is strength, silence, or stoicism. Over time, those boys grow into men who carry that same emotional armor. They learn to suppress, to hide, to stay guarded. And when the time comes to form deep connections, when real emotional communication is needed, they struggle, not because they don't feel, but because they were never taught how to speak the language of feeling. Society often measures manhood by control, by toughness, by emotional independence. Men are praised for being providers, protectors, leaders, but rarely are they celebrated for being emotionally open. They're told to fix problems, not feel them. So when a man is faced with emotional vulnerability, especially in romantic relationships, it's like asking someone to swim without ever teaching them how to float. The desire might be there, but the tools are missing. That creates a tension within him. He might crave love, intimacy, or connection, but the moment it requires him to open up, fear kicks in. He doesn't know what to say, how to say it, or if it's even safe to say it. For many men, emotions are internalized rather than expressed. Anger might come out easily because society deems it masculine, but sadness, fear, insecurity, those get buried. That creates a disconnect when they enter relationships with women who are often more emotionally fluent. Women tend to express, process, and communicate what they feel in real time because they've been given more emotional permission growing up. So when she asks him how he feels or wants to talk about something meaningful, he may shut down. He's not cold. He's not uninterested. He's simply unequipped. It's not that men don't want to be vulnerable. They just haven't been given a safe place to practice it. Many of them have never had a moment where opening up didn't result in judgment, ridicule, or shame. Maybe they tried once and it backfired. Maybe they watched their fathers stay quiet, their uncles suffer in silence, or their peers mock sensitivity. Those experiences stick. They teach a man that vulnerability is risky, even dangerous. So rather than speak on what's in his heart, he learns to keep it hidden. He chooses silence, not because he lacks emotion, but because he's afraid of how it will be received. This emotional conditioning doesn't just affect romantic relationships, it affects every area of a man's life. But in love, it becomes especially visible. Because love demands presence, it demands communication, honesty, and vulnerability. When a woman wants to connect deeply, she needs words, feelings, understanding. But the man, shaped by years of emotional restraint, may not know how to meet her there. He may crave that same connection, but doesn't know how to build it. Because emotional connection requires exposure. It requires letting someone in, letting someone see the messy parts, the insecure parts, the very parts he's been trained to hide. What happens next is often a cycle of frustration on both sides. She feels neglected, confused, and unimportant. He feels overwhelmed, ashamed, and inadequate. But neither of them are wrong. They're just speaking different languages, molded by different emotional experiences. He's been taught that silence is strength, while she's been taught that silence is absence. So his way of being strong looks like distance, while her need for closeness feels unmet. Until society changes the way it defines masculinity, this will continue to be a common pattern. Until boys are raised with emotional literacy, until men are told it's okay to feel, to speak, to open up, many will remain trapped in silence. They'll crave love, desire connection, and feel deeply, but they won't know how to show it. They'll want to say, I need you, I care, I'm scared too. But those words will get stuck behind pride, fear, and generations of emotional suppression. And the sad part is many great connections will be lost, not due to lack of love, but due to the inability to communicate it. Silence in the context of a man who craves a woman isn't always accidental. Sometimes it's intentional. It's a strategy, whether he's conscious of it or not. He may not say the words, but his silence becomes a tool, one that tests your patience, gauges your interest, or even attempts to shift the power dynamic. It's subtle, it's confusing, and it can leave a woman second-guessing everything she thought she knew about the connection. There are men who, when they feel something deep for a woman, won't move toward her right away. Instead, they'll fall back. They'll become distant, less available, less verbal. Why? Because they want to see something. They want to see if she'll reach out, if she'll chase, if she'll miss them. It's not always malicious. Sometimes it's just insecurity wrapped in silence. He wonders, does she feel the same way I do? Instead of asking directly, he goes quiet and watches what happens. If she texts, if she calls, if she asks what's wrong, that becomes his confirmation, not her words, but her reaction to his absence. That's what he reads as interest. Other times, it's not about reassurance, but control. There are men who have learned through experience, ego, or even pain that silence gets a response. That withholding attention creates tension. That pulling back draws a woman in closer. It's a power play, often unconscious, where he's not necessarily trying to hurt her, but he's trying to maintain the upper hand. He craves her, yes, but he also fears being vulnerable. So rather than risk saying too much, revealing too much, or losing control of the emotional balance, he says nothing at all. He lets his silence do the talking. And because silence is such a loud thing in relationships, it works. It gets noticed. It pulls focus. In many situations, silence becomes a waiting game. He's not reaching out, but he's waiting for her to do it. He wants to know how much she'll give, how long she'll stay engaged, how deeply she feels, without him having to expose anything first. For a man who is emotionally cautious or proud, this is a way of protecting himself. He thinks, if she comes to me first, I won't look weak. I won't have to be the one who puts my heart on the line. His craving is real, but his fear is bigger. So he strategizes through silence. Some men also use silence to mask confusion. They want the woman, they feel the connection, but they're not